I'm Richard Hood. I'm working as a director of a housing association, and I qualified as a solicitor about 2 years ago. I studied on the SQE, obviously the two parts, the SQE1 and the SQE2. For the SQE1, I just did book study. I was about a day late signing up on a course, and I bought the books and started reading them, and found them really to be really engaging and really easy to use. And about 6 months later, I put myself in for the exam, and passed on the basis of book learning. I did sign up for a weekend revision course as well, which was helpful because, you know, when you're learning on your own, you really don't know how, you've got nothing to gauge it against. You don't, you know, and there's a danger in you're seeing the same questions as well in the course materials. So you're answering the same questions over and over again. SQE2, I did sign up on a formal course, and there was weekly student groups and inputs from the course provider, which was really good. And there was a bit more coordination and a bit more engagement between students, which I thought was really, really useful. I think sort of kind of essential, definitely on the SQE2. I divided up my time by looking at all the functional learning areas, and making sure that I was revising them and then going back with time. I'm kind of older, so I'm forgetting more. Probably young people do as well. But I was constantly going over and, you know, as the exams got closer, bringing myself, you know, rereading the course materials and making sure that, you know, I was getting the details. And probably on the third or fourth read of the course materials, you're delving down quite deep into the details. And doing lots of multiple choice questions, because there's only so many questions that can be asked in certain ways. So, and you know, the way that they're asked, there's a certain formula, and understanding how the questions are asked, so that when you actually go into the exam, you're not confronted by the screen and seeing questions in a format you've never seen before. So, yeah, knowing the subject areas, kind of second guessing where questions could come up, but also out there, you know, in the course providers and, you know, on the SRA's own sites, there's sample questions, and it's just doing as many of those as possible and thinking about the variations of those questions. For SQE2, probably a bit more difficult. And I think people go into SQE2, probably particularly those in private practice, thinking it's about the skills of being able to talk to people, it's bound to write things, which obviously it is, but there's more to it. The actual way that it's assessed is far more kind of involving. And so it's having those skills, but also, you know, demonstrating the legal knowledge. So, and it goes back to IRAC, you know, the issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, and building that into everything that you do. So I was kind of spotting scenarios and talking to other people and discussing different scenarios. And you can look at, you know, different subjects in the SQE2, like business law, and there's probably about 20 scenarios or generic scenarios that you can work on. So, you know, there's so much you need to know for the exams. So you need to be kind of smart in spotting what's likely to come up. With one of the jobs I did take 1 day off a week, which was really helpful to have a dedicated study day, and that was for SQE2, because I think, as most students will find, it kind of overwhelming the amount of stuff that you need to know, and knowing where to focus and getting to grips with that so that you can feel confident when you go in the exam. So, yeah, working and studying at the same time and having a home life and a bit of a social life as well. I went back and claimed, went back about 3 employers and claimed work experience from the past, which was one of the good things that SQE allows you to do. Because for someone like me to then have to get a training contract and, you know, work at that level for 2 years to gain the qualifying work experience or the post-qualification experience was just not possible. So, you know, it recognises that I would have been doing legal work at a high level and, you know, negotiating and dealing with, you know, external firms and doing stuff in-house with a legal team. that was of a sufficient quality to count as qualifying work experience. And, it's varied in legal practices. You can be having people doing, fairly routine work, which is still good qualifying work experience. But I'd sort of got a depth from working in positions that I had of, know a bigger, wider perspective on, legal work. Basically went back to my previous employers and got them to provide me with a reference. I had my job descriptions and job specifications, which actually said what I required, was required to do that job. Put forward put together a sort of portfolio of evidence, and then I gave it to my external person to look at it, come back and ask me some questions, and basically validate it and verify it. And then I was able to upload it, which is a really simple process, onto the SRA site to sign off what I'd got. And I claimed about 10 years. I could have probably claimed more, but given that the requirement was only for 2 years, I just wanted to make sure that I'd got that body of experience there. The tips I'd give to anyone thinking of doing the SQE is, first of all, sit down and work out a study plan. You've got a timescale, when you're taking the exam. Look at the time you've got available and use it wisely, to get yourself organised. Most people have got, they are working at the same time. They are juggling home life with kids and social life and other commitments. So, it's essential to have a plan in place, but also have some flexibility built into that so that, there's things that come up that you can't be aware of. And it's maintaining that focus during your study as well. Of sticking to the plan as far as you can, because you've given it some thought about the best way of doing it, but also at the same time, being kind to yourself, building in kind of treats and nice things to look forward to. The thing I found really good was exercise as a good counter to sitting down, studying, going out running, cycling, the things I like to do. And I would say to any student to enjoy the learning. Because the law is a fascinating area of study. I particularly like criminal law, having had no contact with criminal law, which made me as well sort of start watching a few more TV programs, 24 Hours in Police Custody, all those things, to actually see, get some first-hand experience of, how the law's applied. I also sat in criminal courts and magistrates, which I did actually find a bit depressing, but it was good experience. I also sat in the Supreme Court one day and saw a really interesting civil case being played out. And during your study as well, have a study group, have people you can discuss stuff with, and bounce ideas off and see what they're thinking and, tackle questions together. Because, in your answer, there'll be things that you've forgotten that someone else has got. And that kind of embeds the learning more when you've had that kind of discussion, and when you're sitting there in the exam, it'll come up. And as I said before, practice as many questions, scenarios as possible as part of the study to keep it live, and be aware of the assessment criteria that the SRA are looking for, in terms of skills, but also the knowledge of the law and how to apply them. And I think the golden rule that flows for everything is the IRAC model, the issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, because you can see that, particularly in SQE2, that it flows in everything. A research paper, you start off with what the issue is, you state the rules, you look at the analysis, in a letter to a client or an email to a partner, very similar structure. And I think once you've got that in your mind and you know what to put in each of those sections, it's really, really helpful.